Hey guys, so for this assignment I decided, we're going to go back to my fantasy baseball page. And even though fantasy baseball is over, I'm also going to show you a bit of fantasy hockey. They're kind of tied together, same people in the same league. Um, so there's a lot of communication that goes on amongst each other and amongst all of us. So this is our homepage. Um, on our homepage you can see basically the playoffs have ended. I finished in 4th, didn't win my last game, but it was a good run. So anyway, a lot of things that we talk about within the community involve trades, payment. As you can see, here's a note from the commissioner. He writes this to us at the beginning of the year. This was written in, actually this is the middle of the year. This was on August. Basically, this is where he makes general announcements to everybody, whether it was getting our payments in, and then after our payments were in, this is how the league was going to get paid out. Each winner, the division winners got $25. The regular season overall champ got $25. $450 went to the champ, the overall playoff champion, and then second place got $45, and then third place you got $5. So that was kind of cool. I mean, it was part of what we do, part of the league. Here's also our little our smack talk or update board. This is where teams and they write amongst each other, basically giving you up, talking smack to, teammates and players. And literally, this is how you can communicate with one another within the league. You either do it this way or through our message board. Here's recent messages. This is where one of the concerns or one of the things that we always talk about or we try to figure out within the baseball league is what's the current keeper situation. Since this is a fantasy keeper league, you're allowed to keep 4 players a year. Each contract is for an extended for a certain amount of time. You get to keep a player for 2 years on your team. Otherwise, you have to trade him. If you trade him, he can be kept a 3rd year. Otherwise, he goes into the draft. It sounds a little more confusing than what it actually is. And so we always write, here's John, whose team is the Clown Questions. He asks what's the current keeper situation. And then this is where Kevin, the kid, the new king, he's the commissioner. He answers back. And the secretary of the league, O'Neill, he sends out a copy of what's the keeper status for players going into next year. So you can set your roster up going into next year by making trades and understanding who you're going to be able to keep going forward. There's draft picks involved in this league, obviously. So when you make a trade, you're if you're looking for keepers or you're looking to to get more draft picks, you'll trade guys who are keepers and have an idea of who's going to be in the draft next year, whether you want to stockpile picks for major players next year or just to go for a championship. Here's another thing that's on the message boards that we use. This happens to be our power rankings. The commissioner, Kevin, he writes power rankings every year, or excuse me, every so often throughout the year. This one was done in July, and basically he writes a synopsis of what teams or how teams are doing, and he ranks them. And each tier is given a funny name. Like this is the Kelly Leak tier, who's a local troublemaker for the Bad News Bears. So you look at these teams, and these end up being the top 4 teams at the end of the year. So the power rankings in July ended up coming to fruition. My team finished 4th. I lost to the 3rd place team, and then these 2 teams battled it out. Here's the Marla Hooch from A League of Their Own. Again, so the power rankings are made. And after the power rankings are made, we end up going on to Twitter or within the message boards, or you message or send emails to one another. Here's some of the interactions we have on Twitter. This is actually more related to hockey, but we'll get to that in a second. But anyway, we communicate with each other on it. Here's Dan, who owned a team in the Fantasy Baseball League. Tyler also owned one, and if you remember my previous video about the league, Tyler was new to the league. Here's he interacting, and here's Kevin, the commissioner. So we all talk about the power rankings that he came up with, and as you can see, there's a lot of interaction just between the 3 of us. And there's other people included, but this just happens to be us 3 talking about fantasy, or the fantasy league. to find a way we communicate with each other, and this is especially important when we're trying to make trades, especially in fantasy baseball, is our trade block. This is where you go and you post what players you're looking to deal and what you're kind of looking for. This is important throughout the year because that way you know who's willing to make a trade, who they're looking to deal, who can you possibly acquire, and what's it going to cost to get it. Like for instance, Tabor Jeter to our back was looking to deal Curtis Granderson and Michael Bourne, and they only wanted draft picks really in return. These guys were expendable to them, not having great years, so they were looking to move them. Here's my team. Cole Hamels was a guy I kept last year. I was willing to move him. I was looking for help at third base and at center field. So this is where you can make moves with teams and know what players are available and what teams are looking for in return, and it really makes things easier when you're trying to go and make a trade or broker or negotiate a deal with other teams. Now I know the season fantasy baseball is now over, so I wanted to show you how fantasy hockey works. This happens to be my fantasy hockey team right here. It works. It's the same players that are in my fantasy baseball league, except this league actually happens to be a lot bigger. And I'll pull up the league page so you can see. We've got I want to say 18 teams in this league, so it's very deep, very competitive, and this is where you see, for whatever reason, a lot more communication than we actually did in fantasy baseball. I mean, fantasy hockey tends to be a lot more intense and a lot more humorous. For instance, we had a very interesting trade that went down 2 days ago where a guy who was new to the league ended up making a head-scratching trade where he ended up trading a starting goalie and a first and a third round draft pick for a goaltender who may not be the starter for very long, and a couple of really, really late draft picks, like second to last and last round picks. It was a weird trade, and the league blew up about it. I mean, guys were really, because it really hurt the trade value market, the trade market for a goalie, which happens to be something I'm looking for, and guys just started ripping them. I mean, that's one thing about this league is people really don't hold back when crazy trades go down, and it really became the talk of the league. I mean, you can see as soon as the deal went down, this was just one page of comments on the deal itself, and you can see that guys really had a problem with the deal. I mean, you had Kevin who talked about, he was like, sweet Jesus, if this guy knows that he traded a first and a fourth for a goalie, not even considered to be the starting for very long, he probably drives on the short bus. So, guys are really they're not afraid to say much. I mean, this league is very, very competitive. So I'll just go back to this page. And again, there's a trading block, and we communicate with each other. I mean, I've made it very clear on my team that I need a goalie. I'm willing to deal. The Dirty Danglers, who's Tyler Krolikowski and Dan, who I showed on my Twitter page. I'll bring them back up. They're in the Fantasy Hockey League as well. This discussion right here actually happens to be about that previous trade that went down, because we both, Tyler and Dan and I, were in the trade discussions for said goalie that was traded, but we were not going to give up what actually went down. But anyway, he's willing to give up a 6th round and a 7th round pick, which happen to be have a 2nd and 3rd round pick. I've made it clear I want a goalie. I ain't mad at you. Is willing to deal some players. So again, the communication is rampant and very much ongoing. Social media, I mean, Twitter tends to be where we do most of our communicating about things that go on within the league. What surprised me about this league is, or the surprises about both fantasy hockey and fantasy baseball, is how competitive it is. I mean, guys are really intense. Like I said, I showed you the discussion page, how guys, really go after or get after each other about trades. What didn't surprise me was how competitive this league was. I mean, I know that a lot of the players in this league, a lot of the general managers of these teams, we all come from sports backgrounds. We were all former players. So our competitive natures just eventually just take over. I mean, and then once money's involved, whether you're out playing golf with a couple buddies and there's a $2 bet on a hole, or for $450 for a first place winner, your competitive nature just takes over. $2 is really nothing, but you're going to scratch and claw for $2. Just like this league. I mean, we've seen already 3 trades that happened in this league within the first week. Guys are already, trying to make trades. Guys are already talking about trades. Whether it's people are trying to find ways to improve their team, and we really communicate with each other, through Twitter. And again, like I said, the league page, commissioner notes and contact info and payouts, and here's basically the exact same thing that you saw before on the fantasy baseball page is what we carried over in fantasy hockey. We run it exactly the same, and it's literally just as competitive.